Hi, everybody. It's Karen from Divorce Workshop with our special series of talks. And today we're inviting Mary Ann Hughes to come on, and she's going to talk for couples that have special needs. I'm looking forward to this talk, as well as just let you know that our Just Separated workbook is coming out in October. Hi, Mary Ann.
Hi, Karen. How are you today?
Good. I'm looking forward to another great talk.
Yes, always looking forward to them. Love our
Good.
talks.
Yeah, I know. So good. So today, why I wanted to talk about this is because I read an article a while back and it caught my eye and I thought of you and I said the prevalence of people who go through divorce for kids that have children with special needs is quite considerably higher from an already high rate of divorce. So I thought, well, Mary Ann's an expert at this, so let's talk to her about why some of this is happening or why it happens.
Sure, yeah. So I've seen all kinds of studies and numbers and anecdotally as well, seeing among people I know and clients that divorce rate among families who have a child with a disability is definitely higher than the
Mm-hmm.
50% that we normally
Mm-hmm.
see. And some studies have shown as high as 80 or even 87%. I've seen
Wow.
that number thrown around in psychology today and mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, whatever the number is, people debate about the number sometimes, but it is a high number and it does affect a lot of families. We've got about 20% of American families have a child with some sort of disability or chronic illness or special health care needs. And so this
Mm-hmm.
affects a lot of people. And so there's a lot of stress involved in not just among the parents, but in the whole household. So we have to look at how the needs of that child are impacting. Not to say that the child is the cause of divorce by any means. It's not ever what I want people to come away with.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we handle those stresses as a parent and trying to balance all that with everything else that we do to raise our family and provide a safe environment for them?
Yeah, so what are I wrote some notes down too, but what are the reasons, like main reasons why people divorce? Like, is there any like top five reasons? Like, is it increased stress or could it be financial? Like, is anything like that?
For sure. I mean, you get the typical reasons for
Mm-hmm.
divorce. So you definitely have a lot of more stresses because you're trying to balance not just everything else that you have to do and your normal reasons, but then also the extra stresses of maybe focusing on that child and the extra care they may need in terms of going to therapy or special things and
Mm-hmm.
just the extra stress that might cause about maybe one parent or both parents, whatever case may be, is their constant focus and worry on that child. And
Mm-hmm.
so some people, if their foundation is not strong enough, their
Mm-hmm.
marriage can't maybe withstand some of
Mm-hmm.
those extra pressures about not just the day to day, but then how are we dealing with our child's needs and how do we plan for the future? That's kind of a scary thought in itself, is what happens later in life. So if somebody has a short illness, say a neurotypical child or someone with any kind of disability gets sick, we know, okay, well, they're going to get better in a few days, few weeks, whatever it might be. But this
Mm-hmm.
is something ongoing. It's something, chronic in some cases. And so even if it's an intellectual or some kind of other disability, there's not an endpoint for that. So it's something that's constantly we're having to deal with and having to then, help our adult children through, whether they're young or adult children.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, how do we plan around that? And some people just, honestly aren't set up for that. They some sadly I saw cases where one parent just says, okay, this isn't really the life I envisioned,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not able to stay. The reality is one parent at least has to make that commitment to
Mm-hmm.
take care of that child. And so we hope that um, if one parent's a caregiver ends up being that way and one person contributes financially or they're both doing that, we want to make sure that child's taken care of, whether or not both parents are in the home or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I also read like even differing coping mechanisms. So when you brought up chronic, so in my field we would call that it's like chronic sorrow. If you have, an a child, or a sickly child, who may never be able to live on their own, or so there's kind of that chronic grief that could be felt with the couple as well. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Sure. I mean, this is all, relate to the grief cycle. Some people never guess maybe past or may circle back to the denial phase and kind of stay in that phase. Never get to the acceptance where you can try to, move on and make the best of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just either can't come to terms with that child's disability and what it would take, how it affects their life. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's too hard for them to cope with. And like you said, it maybe it's a matter of coping mechanism. A lot of times it's communication, how we
Yeah.
communicate with the other spouse and try to get help from other places. I think definitely we need support systems in our lives, especially as special needs parents. But also I've seen where some parents are so focused then on the child, they're not nurturing the relationship
Yeah.
and making time for themselves, for self-care, and all those things come into play as well. Because then you're never really dealing with the stresses. You're always focusing on the kind of the fires and issues at hand, and not really
Mm-hmm.
looking at the long term, the health of the relationship, of the whole family, and other people that are in the family, perhaps other siblings or other goals,
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities you might have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because um, it for us, when you're going through divorce anyways, I mean, when you have children, it's a hard adjustment, and a lot of times you don't look after that relationship. But what you're saying here, it's even harder when you have a child with special needs, that maybe even, it'd be harder for you guys as a couple to remain sometimes being a couple, because that's kind of still important, even though a lot of us tend to kind of forget that when we have kids. But so you're saying it can be even harder.
It gets hard because, for one, if your child has a lot of needs or behavior issues, it's hard to find a sitter or respite provider,
Mm-hmm.
whatever term you'd like to use, to come in
Mm-hmm.
and you feel comfortable with that person taking care of your child. A lot of times, some parents are like, no one can take care of my child. I've got to be there,
Yeah.
100% of the time. And so that doesn't allow you a chance to recharge. It doesn't allow the relationship a chance uh, to flourish or get the spark back, or just have weekly, monthly, whatever date nights that you might like to have. I
Mm-hmm.
went to a special needs resource fair some time ago, and I asked them. I said, "What was the last time they were there? A couple with a teenage daughter." I said, "What was the last time you guys went out for fun?" They're like, "No, we've never done that." I mean,
Oh.
like the girl's like 14 years old, and they never
Mm-hmm.
were able to make the time or feel comfortable enough to have someone come in while they just had like an hour off to enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
And so that causes, definitely a lot of issues
Yeah.
there.
And probably a lot of communication breakdown too happens, right? Would you say that there's like, it's pretty common too. It's like only, I think, 33% of couples have the same parenting style. So do you think parenting style has an effect as well with couples that are dealing with special needs?
Sure. Yeah. So definitely if one um, parent feels like they have to be there for, all the needs,
Mm-hmm.
and one parent is maybe trying to foster more independence or has that approach,
Mm-hmm.
then there's going to be some conflicts. There's going to be sometimes difference in opinion as to how each parent might see the disability. For instance, if you got
Yeah.
someone who um, presents certain characteristics or challenges in front of one parent but not the other, or the other parent's not seeing it that way, that causes some conflict as well in the marriage and also during the divorce,
Mm-hmm.
frankly, in terms of coming to agreement on what that child needs and how do we take care of those needs.
Mm-hmm. So are there any like you've been in this business, is there any tips or anything that if parents are watching this and they're not divorced, like they're still married, is there anything that you can let them know? Like we talked about, communication is really vital, but is there any other things that you want to suggest for those that are still married and dealing with this?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, there's the love languages, approach in terms of understanding what is important to you and what's important to your spouse and how they like to communicate. Whether it's, communication, whether it's time together, whether it's, whatever it might be, whatever is important to them, let that let that other partner know what's important to you and how you like to receive information or gifts or time off or just whatever it is. And also, and the child also has their own love language as
Mm-hmm.
well in terms of how they like
Mm-hmm.
to interact with the world and what they like to receive. And sometimes we forget about that too. It's sometimes hard to ask them if they're not verbal, but you can kind of
Mm-hmm.
see based on the different, circumstances and observations based on different social cues and so on. But yeah, so definitely, take time to understand your spouse, kind of why they're thinking the way they are, what's driving their behavior
Mm-hmm.
and concerns. So communication definitely is key, having those conversations. And if you can't do it yourselves, then find a professional,
Mm-hmm.
find maybe a therapist or psychologist or behavior specialist that maybe works with the kids to maybe share some strategies that work at home and or at school or other settings that maybe you
Mm-hmm.
can carry over for home to maybe bring down the stress level in the home. Because I can tell you from my experience, when someone's having a really hard day, it affects everybody in the household. And
Right.
so, if we can keep the stress down and how we relate and react and manage those behaviors or challenges, then we're calmer and everybody else around us can be calmer as well
Mm-hmm.
and focus on what has to happen. So we want to, kind of think of our, what's important to us, what our foundation is in our marriage, and how do we build and nurture that. So it could be, like we talked about, going on date nights, even though it's hard and you haven't had a sitter before, or maybe are not real sure that you can handle that, but give it a try, or
Mm-hmm.
even bring in a sitter even while you're home, just so you're comfortable, they're comfortable, the child's comfortable, everybody's comfortable, and then take the next step. Maybe spend an hour out, and then it becomes 2 hours,
Yeah.
and maybe work up to a whole weekend or even a vacation. Some
Yeah.
people, that's so foreign to them to think they can travel without their child, but it can be done by putting the proper measures in place and doing it
Mm-hmm.
gradually so everybody's comfortable with that.
So what I'm hearing there too is get the support systems in place while you're married. So then, that'll help, um, that maybe hopefully you won't get a divorce if you have some support systems in place, right? And
For
good
sure.
communication and love language. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the goal, right? I mean, I'm not here trying to encourage divorce, but
Mm-hmm.
as a result of some of these factors and other things that come into play, people do end up in a divorce situation. And my personal feeling is, if, like you said, if we have, worked on some of these concerns that maybe were voiced or not voiced during the marriage, that maybe we didn't have the high as divorce
Mm-hmm.
rates. It's hard to say for sure, but I think definitely, making time to really try to connect with our spouse, really try to share what we're facing, what we're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with. Sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
I can speak, as a caregiver, we don't maybe want to express everything that we're dealing with, to not maybe feel like we're burdening the other partner, because they have other stresses that they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes they don't know really,
Right.
what you're dealing with and why you're feeling stressed, and they're feeling stressed for other reasons that they're maybe not communicating to you, or frustrations. And so, yeah, the more we can, have that dialogue and feel open to share those kind of feelings and concerns, then hopefully we can work to address them, as opposed to, one day somebody decides they've had
Yeah.
enough and then they're done.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for sure, working on it during marriage is important. But then you might find, like you said, having these caregivers in place during marriage is important. And even if you haven't, you're going to have to do that once you
Mm-hmm.
divorce, right? 'Cause,
Mm-hmm.
during your time, whatever possession time ends up being, you still are the parent then 100% of the time, and you're going to need a break. So
Mm-hmm.
if you don't already have that in place, if you're married, hopefully try to get that. But once you're divorced, for sure, you definitely need to get some help in there, just for your own sanity, for you to have a break, for you to recharge, so that you can be the best parent you can
Mm-hmm.
be to the child and take care of what the child needs.
What are so since you've worked with clients that are going through divorce, if you can think of a couple of things, that what are their main, have they ever said to you what their main reasons for the divorce was? Is it something that we've said like today?
Some of those, but then, kind of back to the main reasons for divorce. I mean, you have,
Mm-hmm.
maybe someone going outside the marriage for a
Yeah.
relationship or things
Yeah.
like that. And those things happen a lot. I mean, any marriage,
In any marriage, yeah.
but, what are the driving factors for that to happen? It could be that somebody's not, um, feeling that they're connecting at home, right? I mean, there's other
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
reasons too. I'm not going to
Yeah.
downplay that. Everyone
Yeah.
has their own reasons, but that's one reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we want to try to hopefully not have that happen and people go down that
Right.
road. But by doing the things we talked about, try to bring in some bring in a spark. Think about when you first were married.
Mm-hmm.
What was fun? What did you guys enjoy doing together? And granted, things are going to change over time, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't maybe do everything that you did, pre-kids, whether you have disabilities or not. What are some things that we can do to make life fun?
Right.
Because really we all want fun, we want enjoyment, we want um, to create a positive, nurturing environment for our
Mm-hmm.
family. And how can
Mm-hmm.
we do that together? Sometimes we feel, even if you have kids and feel like you can't go out, just on your own. Some people, even as a family, are afraid to take their child out in public, or it's a lot of work to do so. But I would
Mm-hmm.
encourage, just try.
Mm-hmm.
Even we talked about, even small steps. Just go to the store, go to a restaurant, do a day trip, and then work on an overnight trip
Yeah.
as a family.
Yeah.
Some people have never done that. They've never taken their child on a plane because they don't know how that child will react, or they're concerned about um, other looks or reactions they may get from other
Mm-hmm.
people. But I would say just focus on you
Mm-hmm.
and having a positive, enjoyable time for you and your family. It doesn't really matter what everybody else thinks around you. Most people are understanding. They've seen different situations and maybe have family members or people in the community that they've seen that have struggles. And so you may have some people look at you because they don't understand, but some people will give you, some sympathy and empathy, and congratulate you, and, in terms of what you're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
see that you're a good parent trying to do the right thing.
What I liked, what came up today too was like, even in divorce, or whether you're married or in divorce, is the baby steps, right? Like, do those little things to, it's actually a form of really good self-care. Self-care if you're still married on the couple, but also when you're in your divorce too, or divorced, that you self-care for yourself too, right? Even if it's an hour away and you have a family member that knows your child or children well, right? You can take that time, because you, as you said, you have to, like when you're single parenting at that, or co-parenting, and you're single with that children or child at that time, you're going to have to take breaks sometimes, because you can't always be 100% on all the time. So I like that came up today, the baby steps,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's mhm, sorry.
Yeah, I think for sure that's important because, yeah, I can tell you, from my experience and people that I've spoken to, self care kind of takes the back seat to taking care of the day to day demands of, being a caregiving parent, and the one taking them to therapies and everything else that we have to do for
Mm-hmm.
that child and maybe all the children in the home. And so taking care of ourselves becomes the last priority. And I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you that is not going to get us to our end goal of having a healthy, happy, intact family, because then, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to suffer, and then other people suffer as a result, even though we may not, that's not our intention.
Mm-hmm.
And we want the best, which is why we're not maybe taking care of ourselves. But then it creates different kind of stresses for that everybody feels, and then ends up being a worse situation. So definitely, even if you're at home, and just take 5 minutes if you can, or just have an extra cup of coffee, a few minutes, maybe give the kids something else to do, bring in
Mm-hmm.
a provider, whatever it is. Just take a few minutes to just kind of relax, be grateful for your situation, and maybe make a plan for what you can do to make that day better, and the next day as well.
Yeah. Well, this is a great talk. I want to, before, if anybody has any questions, just put in the comment. Otherwise, I know you're super busy right now, so tell us what upcoming events you have.
Yeah, so I've got the World Autism Summit coming up in
Oh,
October.
that's great.
So they can go to Autism Today Foundation sites to register for that. There's some promotional programs and ways to win tickets for
Mm,
that. So, but it's a 4-day event going on. I believe it's October 17th through the 20th, and all kinds of experts in autism and neurodiversity, including Dr. Temple Grandin, who's an icon, a
mhm.
lot of people might know. And yeah, it's there as a great event for self advocates, people who have some neurodiversity, or for parents and professionals as well, just to kind of learn from the different experts. There's information on family issues, on vocational, some scientific things, medical things, all kinds of topics that are be helpful for people.
Sounds fantastic. You know, a resource for everybody, like one place, one shop stop resource, right? So that you can
Yeah,
get whatever you need, and uh, help that you need. Because I think,
exactly.
in my field too, as well in your field, I think support is essential. So whatever you're going through, the better support networks we have, either through coaching or counseling or respite or whatever you need, right? I think it's vital.
Yeah, because I always like to go to these events to learn. I go to in-person
Mm-hmm.
events. I go to, I attend these summits, especially presenting at this summit. I'm on
Mm-hmm.
day 2, so be sure to look for me, and get some insights on some more special needs divorce issues and how to manage the dynamics. But yeah, so definitely that's on my special family transitions page as well as my personal page. So yeah, definitely reach out if you want more information
Mm-hmm.
on that or anything else I can do to support you all during your marriage or during the
Mm-hmm.
transitions and afterwards as well.
Yeah, your website's full of resources. So I hope people are listening today, they can check it out. And anyways, it was great to have you, and I hope to chat with you soon. And thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.